My
wife
one-year-old.
and I are running a little bit behind schedule. So thanks for your patience.
All right, Wes, this is Andrea. Am I good to read the open meeting law statement?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everyone. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made by Boston City TV, part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. It will be broadcast on Xfinity Channel 26, RCN Channel 13, and FiOS Channel 962, as well as the City of Boston's YouTube channel. While we are not live at the moment due to technical difficulties, we are being recorded live to tape for later broadcast online and on cable. With that, I will turn it over to our chair, Wes.
Hi there, everybody. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is ready for the fall because we're here in September now. And let me just pull up the agenda. Give me just a moment to do that. Okay, I'm looking at the agenda. We will start as we do with introductions. Bear with me just one second. Okay, so we'll start with introductions. Please introduce yourself when I call on you with your name and your role and which region you live in the city of Boston. Also, a visual description of yourself would be helpful as well. If you don't have if your camera is off, I would appreciate a picture, a headshot. That would be helpful in your off screen, if it's possible. I can begin. My name is Wes Ireland, and I am the board chair, and I live in the north end of Boston. And visual description of myself, I would say I'm a millennial, and wearing a black shirt that has a logo on it. I have a beard, and that would, I think, wrap it up. Please identify yourselves as I call on you to introduce yourselves. Olivia, can we have you start, please?
Sure, sorry. My name is Olivia Richard. I am a board member, and I am from Brighton. And I am a white female with close cropped hair, glasses, and a white t-shirt.
This is Wes. Thank you, Olivia. I didn't realize that I was also supposed to mention that I am deaf. I meant to mention this. I am a deaf male. But you'll be hearing the voice of 2 sign language interpreters who will be voicing when I use American Sign Language, so they may not sound like me, but it's me that they're representing. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself next, please?
Sure. My name is Paul Karen, and I serve as the vice chairman of the board. I work at the Boston Planning Department, and I serve as a mental health advocate, and I live in the west end of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can we have a visual description of you, Paul? Do you mind?
I have a face for radio. No, I'm just kidding. Just a 6-foot male with dark hair, and that's wearing a white polo shirt.
This is Wes. Thanks for that, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Carl Richardson. I live in Brighton Center. I identify as a deaf-blind individual. I am the secretary of the commission board, advisory board. and I am a middle-aged white Caucasian male with salt and pepper hair, and I am told that I visually look a lot like Nathan Lane, for those who are in the theater television world, and that's it.
This is Wes. Thank you, Carl. We appreciate that. Richard, would you introduce yourself next, please?
Sure. Richard Glevsky, live in Back Bay. I am a hearing impaired male, white male. I think I would compare myself to Paul in terms of our appearance and its capacity for radio. I have a dark jacket on and a white shirt, and good to be with everybody.
This is Wes. Thank you for that. Richard? Elizabeth, can we have you introduce yourself, please? Elizabeth?
My turn to speak.
Yes.
Yes. Yep, go ahead.
This is Andrea. Elizabeth, you should be unmuted. Are you able to introduce yourself?
Excuse me, I lost my signal for a little bit. I'm Elizabeth Jeanclaw. I just don't know if you had called on me yet.
This is Wes. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Jeanclaw. I live in Dorchester, and I'm an advisory board member.
Elizabeth, are you able to provide a visual description of yourself? This is Wes. I guess we can go back to Elizabeth, unless, Elizabeth, are you able to provide a visual description of yourself? Okay. Jerry, why don't we move on? Jerry, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Jerry Boyd. I'm an advisory board member. I'm from West Roxbury. I am a middle-aged male with salt and pepper hair, much more salt at this point than pepper. And I have a graphic T-shirt, a gray graphic T-shirt on, and happy to be here.
This is Wes. Thank you for that, Jerry. Paulette, can we have you introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paulette Durrett. I live in Mattapan. I'm an advisory board member. I'm a black female with gray hair. I have on a pink shirt with a black sweater.
Great. Thank you for doing that, Paulette. And Zari, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zari Ahmed. I am the advisory board. I live in South Boston. I'm a female, short black hair, white shirt with black stripes. That's it.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We wanted to go ahead and introduce our new board member. We have Tara Southard, and the interpreter apologizes if I'm mispronouncing that. Tara. Actually, yeah, Tara, if you're here, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone.
I'm going to work on my background actually as well, or excuse me, and give us a little bit of your background because you're new to the board.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
This is Andrea. You're a little quiet, but yes, we can hear you. You're unmuted.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I know most of you know me already. I'm Tara Lynn Southard. I am on the JP Roxbury line. I am the newest board member. I'm a female power chair user, wearing glasses with blonde hair and a ponytail and a red shirt. I do have a 8-pound service dog named Blessa, who will probably often make an appearance. Let's see, I moved to Boston 2 years ago from Quinby, and I was on their disability board as well, which is very different. Was born and raised on the South Shore. I've done a lot of disability advocacy and volunteer work. A lot of it is working with families in foster care, including being a surrogate educational parent. Kind of disability-wise, I've done a lot, mostly around independent living and access issues. Yesterday, I had the privilege of going to the Independent Living Conference, so I presented on transportation. It's definitely different being on the side, and thank you for having me.
This is Wes. Thank you, Tara. We appreciate that. We're very happy for your involvement and your having joined the board. I also noticed one more board member has joined us, I think.
Juan Carlos?
Juan Carlos, yes. Juan Carlos, would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Juan Carlos Ramirez. Truly sorry for being so late. So, full name Juan Carlos Ramirez Tapia. I'm native from Peru, living in Boston for a long time now. Board commission member that lives in Boston South End.
And the interpreter missed a visual description, please.
Oh yes, so I'm Hispanic and I have a spinal cord injury.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. We've got one extra board member who just joined. Can I get Colleen to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I think you mean Charlie.
Oh, pardon me. Charlie.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Kim. I'm a resident of the North End, and I'm on the advisory board representing parents and caregivers with loved ones with disabilities.
Excellent. Thank you, Charlie. Lastly, I'll ask the Commissioner McCosh to introduce yourself, please.
Hi everybody, this is Kristen McCosh. I am the Disability Commissioner and ADA Title II Coordinator for the City of Boston. I am not on camera at the moment, but will be on shortly. And I am a middle-aged female with blonde hair and a background of Boston City Hall on my screen.
Wonderful, thank you. Just a moment. I jumped ahead on the agenda here. We did want to introduce the new board member, and we've already done that. But now we're going to go ahead and approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments in regards to the July meeting minutes? I see, Jerry, your hand is raised. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Carl. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I second that. It's Paul.
Anyone in favor, please raise your hand. The board meeting minutes has been moved and has passed as read. Thank you. I'll go ahead with the board chair report. Again, I trust that everyone has had a great summer. It's great to see many of you tonight. I have 4 items that I would like to share. First off, this is probably the wildest summer we've ever had in terms of the presidential election. I ask everyone to prepare with plans of whether you are going to do a mail-in vote, drop off your votes at the ballot box, or in person. It's important to be prepared for Election Day. It's coming quick. The second thing, I'd like to follow up on a previous discussion that we had on estate recovery, especially for adults with disabilities. On Friday, September 6th, Governor Maura Healey signed legislation that significantly limits the practice of state recovery in Massachusetts, which is great. However, the Boston Globe has said that Mass Health has no comment on the policy change, but was open to reducing estate recovery to align with federal requirements. So this is kind of a win at the state level, but we still do have a long way to go to have this policy changed at the federal level. Now it's time for the sports news. Red Sox pitcher Luis Guerrero was promoted to the Red Sox active roster a couple weeks ago. In media reports, he revealed that he has a hidden disability. His right knee lacks much mobility and moves with a significant limp. This was due to an infection during childhood in the Dominican Republic that had not properly been treated. Also, Red Sox hosted Deaf Awareness Day at one of their home games. Another pitcher by the name of Garrett Whitlock knows American Sign Language because his mother happens to be a sign language interpreter, and she interpreted the opening ceremony. The fourth thing is that there are several updates with the Boston Public School System. First of all, there's a new bus tracking app called ZUM, Z-U-M, and this is a tool for many families to be able to do real-time tracking of when the buses are coming to pick up the kids and drop off at school, and the same thing for after school. A lot of people will rely on this to reduce missed or late buses, hopefully. Commissioner McCosh should be getting data from this app in the coming months that is going to show the metrics of buses on time for students with disabilities. Also, BPS is in its third and final year of the state's improvement plan, and one of the objectives was integrating students with disabilities into traditional classrooms. The district has increased the number of available seats for 3-year-olds with disabilities and put them in inclusive classrooms with 4-year-olds that are pre-K students, and also added more inclusive classrooms and space at almost 20 elementary schools. I would also like to add a side note that my oldest child is now in pre-K in Boston Public Schools. Before we move on to the Commissioner's report, are there any questions or comments about the Chair report?
This is Andrea. I see we have a member of the public with their hand raised. The time for public input is at the end of the meeting. That said, I do see your question about blended classrooms in the chat. Inclusive classrooms are blended classrooms, yes.
Correct. Blended classrooms. Some are blended classrooms, correct, but not all of them. Elizabeth, you could go ahead.
Thank you for unmuting me. Yes, thank you for that report, Wes. I had a follow-up question about the estate recovery. Are there any next steps or role that it would be appropriate for us to have as an advisory board? With research, or are there other groups working at the federal level?
This is Wesley speaking. Yes. I believe that we can all do some research to find key point people in the U.S. Congress and send a letter to them. That's the only idea I have for the federal level at this time.
Okay. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Wes, this is Andrea. I'll just add on the BPS transportation piece. As the board knows, we get 3 reports a year from the BPS transportation team about their hiring goals and on-time percentage. We do not have that report yet for the summer school year on-time percentage report, but the mayor and superintendent did have a press availability today to discuss the last week or so of schools. So if folks are interested in that data, we can send it out. Otherwise, I'll have a report at the next board meeting on the 3 data pieces we always ask for.
Thank you, Andrea. That sounds good. And Charlie, your hand was raised?
Yes, it's actually a follow-up question for Andrea. Any guidance on how close they'll be to giving us the disaggregated data specifically, rather than the total on-time percentages and all that, but specifically drilled down for the students that ride the buses with disabilities?
So now that they are using the new app, they might be able to do that. As we've asked previously, they did not have any way of giving us that data, but with the new app, I expect there will be the possibility to give us that data. So we'll keep asking now that they actually have the ability to potentially track that.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I continue just to voice that.
Yeah. So the reports to us are backward looking, and so they'll be looking back at the summer when they didn't have the app. So I wouldn't expect we'd get anything disaggregated looking at the on-time percentage over the summer. But with the new app, that's a new possibility for future reports.
All right. Just in general for context, normally those who have it's like known as 5th quarter or summer school or extended school year. The majority are students that it is approved within their education plan. So majority, I believe, would have some sort of a disability. So those numbers on the extended school year will be very interesting to see how it worked out, because that is it's an important period for a lot of the students, especially my daughter. Summertime is something to make sure that they continue to thrive as they go, and then take a short break and then start school again. So.
This is Wes. Any other comments or questions about the chair's report before we move on in the agenda? Okay, great. Then I will turn the floor over to Commissioner McCosh for the Commissioner's report, please.
Good evening, everybody. Again, this is Krista McCosh. I'm on camera now, so I'm happy to see you all tonight, and we can jump right into my report. I think Andrew's going to share the slides. Okay, so I'm going to give some updates on our department, just some of the work that we've been doing in the office. So as you may know, our office is part of the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. And since we've moved into this cabinet, Mayor Wu and our cabinet chief, Mary Angelie Solis-Severa, have really elevated disability into the city's DEI work. So we really think of it now as diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. In this vein, we are also part of the Equity and Inclusion Academy, which was a pilot last year we have discussed with you, if you remember, but now it's become a permanent program. And what the Academy does is it provides a series of equity learning experiences from city staff in the E&I cabinet to staff who work in every department across the city. And it's really intended to build trust across lines of difference and to teach people about different types of things they can do to improve equity and inclusion in their work, as well as serving constituents from diverse backgrounds and abilities, and making sure that everything they do is accessible and inclusive of our community. So we're excited about that. The Equity and Inclusion Cabinet has also hired its first of several equity managers. And what this position will do is it will be a staff person who will be embedded in a different department. The one who was just hired is in the Human Services Cabinet. So this person will work fully in the Human Services Cabinet, but they will work to bring all of the equity and inclusion goals and messaging and everything else to Human Services Cabinet. So for example, we'll work closely with this manager. For example, at the BCYF centers, we'll make sure that all the BCYF centers know that they have to put language on their flyers when they're having events that states it's accessible. So because we can't interact directly with every single department, this person will be sort of like a liaison, but a little bit more in-depth than that to ensure that all equity inclusion work transfers to the Human Services Cabinet. And then we'll also be hiring managers in other city cabinets in the near future, but we're really excited about this position. And again, our goal is always systemic access, so this will go a big way towards that. Next update is on the ADA transition plan. So when the ADA was first passed in 1990, it required all municipalities to create a transition plan. First, they had to do a self-evaluation to look at they were supposed to look at all their buildings as well as programs and policies. But because it was so new and municipalities lacked capacity, most transition plans really just cover architectural access. And the City of Boston's is the same. So our original transition plan in 1993 gave a broad overview of the accessibility status of the major buildings that are owned and operated by the City of Boston. It's a really old plan. It's on our website. It's typed in all different typewriters, and it has all different parameters that were measured. So what we want to do now is we're calling it an update, but it's not really an update. We've hired a consultant, and what we want to do is be able to show residents like what has changed since 1993. We know all the work the city does today is accessibility work. So we want to highlight like Boston Public Schools, for example. They have done a building assessment on every single school building. So we want to be able to create an interface where, like Charlie, you could look up, oh, this school, when was it last renovated? What accessibility features does it have? When is the next upgrade coming? So we're working on, this consultant's going to pull together all the data that we have. They're not going to do any new measurements or assessments, but we have assessments from the schools, we have assessments from Public Works on sidewalks and curb ramps, we have assessments from the Parks Department and BCYF. So this person's going to pull together all of that data and put it in an interface where people from the public can look it up and get to see like where we are in terms of accessibility and what's coming down the road. So we're very excited about that. And we'll go to the next slide. So one of our annual events is coming up next week, and I think you've all been made aware of it. It's Civic Engagement Day for people with disabilities. It's going to be held next Tuesday, September 24th, in person in Boston City Hall. It's going to be on the 5th floor in the City Council chamber, City Council offices, the Primanti room, and in the hallway. And this year we'll be having 2 sessions. The first one will be in the morning from 10 to noon, and that will focus on youth, students, and young adults. Anybody's welcome to come to either session, but we know that we get a lot of students in the morning session. So some of those questions may be focusing on schools and opportunities for youth and students. So that's just more the focus. The evening session will be more for working-aged adults to come hopefully after work and ask questions of the board and get to meet you and then go and learn a lot about how to get involved in the city. So there'll be information tables on the 5th floor hallway, staffed by various departments who work on civic activities, such as neighborhood service liaisons, the city council, participatory budgeting, the elections department, and they will also have a mock polling station set up in the Primanti room. So people can experience the voting kiosk if they've never voted before. They can certainly register to vote. They can try the AutoMark machine, which is a device that helps people who are blind or who have dexterity limitations to vote independently. They can learn about electronic voting, and they can try a mock ballot in preparation for the November 5th election. The ballot itself won't have any names on it because we don't want to confuse people, but it will have fun questions like what their favorite ice cream flavor is, just to try out the ballot. And then I know we've reached out to you all individually. We'd love to have you participate in either or both events, but we'd like you to prioritize the evening session if you're available. And I know several of you have come to this event in years past, and it's always valuable to have you come interact with the community. So again, next Tuesday, we hope to see you there. And then in October, we have a very busy October this year. Every year we do events for National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or NDEAM. But this year we've really ramped up our schedule. And we're doing this because one of the goals of Mayor Wu and also of the Equity Inclusion Cabinet is financial stability and economic mobility. We know that people with disabilities primarily live in poverty. They are often unable to get jobs because of benefits, and being on Medicaid, they fear losing benefits, which is a real, fear. So financial stability and economic mobility is often a big challenge. So what we want to do is give people some tools and let them know what the City of Boston does that may help them to achieve their goals as far as financial stability. So the first webinar is one we've done for the past 3 years. It's called Pathways to Employment with the City of Boston. And this webinar is going to show people, if they're interested in getting a job with the city, it's going to talk to them about ways to do that. We hope to demystify the whole process, because a lot of people still think, oh, you have to know somebody to get a job with the city, or, oh, they wouldn't hire me because I have a disability. So this webinar is going to really get rid of all those myths, we hope, and also clarify the process, because if you want a job with the Public Health Commission, that Human Resources Department isn't at Boston City Hall, and it's not online at boston.gov. It's a separate website, a separate building. So we have 3 or 4 of those agencies in the city: Public Health Commission, the Boston Public School Department, the Boston Housing Authority. They all have different portals, different employment requirements as far as residency, and different hours, like some are 9 to 5, some are part-time, some are remote, some are in person. So this webinar will give people a sense of a chance to answer all their questions about working for the city and an opportunity to apply for a job. The second webinar is, it's new to this series, but it's something that we've done in the past. It's called Financial Empowerment and Economic Mobility. That's kind of the working title. It's really about some tools that the city provides, like Bank on Boston. It helps people figure out how to establish savings accounts. The city gives seed money for college to kids who are starting kindergarten. They do credit checks and financial wellness checkups, and they provide a lot of tools for free that can really help people get a sense of what their status is and help to map out goals. So we've done this before. It was a whole curriculum that we developed for the Boston Public Schools transition age special ed students, and they have embedded that into the curriculum. And so now we want to bring it over to this side and help share this information with adults. A lot of people know about our tax credits, that they can get tax credits back when they do their taxes, but a lot of people don't know about the other tools that the city has, so we hope to make people aware of that. And then the third webinar will be on finding affordable, available, accessible housing. And this is going to be from the Mayor's Office of Housing. It's going to talk about the lottery process, how to get on the waiting list, what you need to qualify. If you're interested in renting or owning, there are a lot of options that the city has to help you in this process. So that's a really exciting one, because we know housing is the biggest barrier that so many people with disabilities face. And then the third one is going to be on employees, know your rights. And this is basically from the Workers Empowerment Cabinet in the city, along with the Mass Office on Disability. Not only people with disabilities, but all employees have rights to time off and to benefits and things like that they may not know of. So this is going to be a webinar just to apprise people of those things. And then the culmination of all these webinars is going to be a really exciting event that we're piloting this year. It's an in-person hiring, well, it's really interview/hiring event. So on November 4th, which is a Monday, we are going to bring people into City Hall. So anyone who has applied for a job after the Pathways to Employment webinar, we're going to give them a list of pre-approved jobs, or pre-selected, I should say, jobs, maybe 10 jobs or so that are hiring. And anyone who has applied for any of those jobs and meets the minimum qualifications will be guaranteed a first-round interview. And this is a big step, because a lot of times people with disabilities don't know if they should disclose their disability, or they may feel intimidated, like I'm never going to get an interview. So just getting that first round interview is a big barrier that we hope to help people overcome. So again, it's a pilot. We're shooting to have 20 people get interviews. Obviously, it's no guarantee of a job, but it is a guarantee of an interview, so people will get to sell themselves. So other communities have done this. I know the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement has done it. So we're really following on that model. And again, it's a pilot. We don't know if we'll have 5 people show up, or we'll have 20, or maybe we'll have 30 people who want to do it. So again, we're just kind of trying out to see how it works. And again, our efforts are all geared towards increasing economic mobility and financial stability of people with disabilities. So excited about a busy October. And then in November, we have a national and municipal election this year. So just remember the important dates. Voter registration deadlines coming up in October. November 5th is the election, and then early voting kicks off from October 19th to November 1st. This slide has been in here before, but when you're home, you can click on the links. You can find your polling location. You can find dates about early voting. Learn more about the AutoMark machine if you have a visual or a dexterity disability and you want to vote independently. You can learn more about that. Also, accessible electronic voting options and absentee voting, which has always been an option for people who can't vote in person. Other important information to remember is you can find your district city councilor if they're up for election. You can apply to be a poll worker, and you should always be sure to fill out your annual resident listing because that maintains your voter registration status. So if you show up at the poll to vote and you haven't filled out your residency listing in a year or so, you won't be listed on there, and you'll have to re-up that before you can actually vote. All right, that was a lot, but we'll go to the next slide. Okay, actually, I'm going to pause here because this is going to be the next piece of the agenda is going to be my report on what we do as an office. Because I know we had the next part of the agenda is going to be on goal setting for the board members for the next year. So I'm going to pause here and take any questions about my report, if anyone has any. Charlie?
Hi, Commissioner. Thanks for the report. Specifically on all the things that are going on in the next month, it's actually really exciting to see all those webinars and all the things that are going on. It feels like there's going to be a lot going on. I guess as part of our goal setting, because I think it's because each meeting and then going back, it would be great to know which ones, like you said, some of them are repeats, but I'm presuming that there's plenty of updates. And then if we are doing those webinars, as we align some of our goals, is there anything that we can do to, I guess, amplify some of these things, or even figure out if there's any, I wouldn't say metrics, but figure out each year how are is it growing? Is it are we getting more information? Are we really getting great results? I think that would be great to figure out. But that is a comprehensive list of things that are going on, and I really appreciate that.
I love this question because we've just been talking internally about things like data and how we can measure ourselves, and actually the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet is also instituting some measurement tools so we can see who we're impacting, like how much of an impact we're having. And what we've recently done is our brilliant colleague, Chris Morowski, he has recently pulled together data from a bunch of our events that we've done over the last few years, and he's pulled together the different attendees, like to look at like age ranges, for example, because one thing we really do want to work with is transition age students in special ed, because we know like 18 to 24, they're going to be out, a lot of them will be out working soon. So are we getting the messages to them to support them for the next phase of their life? So we are looking at different communities we're reaching, different neighborhoods. Like if nobody from Mattapan is attending our events, why is that? Can we reach out more to people in that neighborhood? We look at different backgrounds on race and ethnicity. If we're only reaching the majority of the people who are white, like what's the problem with that? How can we get more into the neighborhoods and reach other underserved constituents? So yes, we are looking at data, and we do hope to grow the program. And again, I should have mentioned that all these programs will also be open to the transition aid students. I know people who are parents of Boston Public School kids, especially those in special ed, really are concerned about, kids' futures, as all parents are. And so anything we can do to help support Marcia Fitzpatrick, who's our esteemed colleague in BPS, with all her work to get kids ready for the next phase of their lives, we really want to promote that. So that's exactly what you can do, Charlie, is amplify these messages. Please send them out to SpedPAC, and everyone else, send them to your networks, your colleagues, friends, because the more people who turn out, the more the messaging will get out. I mean, the city of Boston really has a lot of great financial programs that people don't even know about. I mean, I'm still learning, and I've worked at the city for over 10 years, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know they did that. So, I mean, there's a lot that we can share, and we hope that you all will amplify this message. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, this is Elizabeth Degenbauer. Thank you for the report, Commissioner. I actually wanted to ask you a question that goes back to the Summer Leadership Institute, or whatever the right word is, that you attended, that I know that that was leadership, as I understood it, that Mayor Wu chose you to go to it, and working with leaders in many fields. But could you tell us a little bit about that? It didn't seem fair to ask you about it while you were on vacation, the time that our meeting.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I love this question too. Yes, so Mayor Wu selected me to attend the Harvard Kennedy School of Government State and Local Government Executive Leadership Program. It was a 3-week program that I went to during the month of June, and I was actually surprised I was the only local person in the group. And there were about 60 of us, 62 people in the group, and they were from all over the country and people from different countries as well. We had people from the Philippines, we had someone from Canada, we had people from Ireland and England. So it was a really diverse group of people. A lot of blue people, a lot of red people. We had people from Tennessee who were like fully red, and we had a lot of great discourse. Really, it's to train local leaders in things like conflict resolution and leadership styles and engaging with the community. And, the city of Boston is so progressive. I was impressed, maybe because we have a lot of people in City Hall who've gone to Harvard, but a lot of the techniques that we were working through were ones that I had already been familiar with, like the wheel of power, like who's in your circle of power, how do you expand that, looking at different techniques and things like that. But it was such a valuable experience, and we're all on our group chat, and we still keep in touch, and we've already done a Zoom. And the interesting thing is so many of them were delegates for the Democratic Convention that, we may never see each other again, but things like that, we will see each other because, we had judges who were part of it, we had elected officials, we had, state senators and state representatives, we had people like appointed officials like myself. We just had the whole gamut, and it was an incredibly valuable experience, and I feel so lucky that the mayor nominated me. So thank you for asking about that.
All right. Very good. You can go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. So I know there's no external presenter tonight. It's just going to be me. And the reason for that is because I know Charlie has been mentioning that he really would like to see the board move forward with setting some goals. And we did do a survey to get your input on goals, and we'll talk about that after my presentation. But before we did that, we really thought, Andrew and I were talking, and we thought, gee, we wonder if the board really has an in-depth understanding of what our office does. So then you'll be able to see like the interplay between what we do and what you can do to advance your work as a board. So I'm going to give a really in-depth overview of what we do, what all my staff does, and what we work on in preparation for the goal setting discussion. And also because we have a new board member and other board members who may be newer, and some of you may just not know what we do. So Andrea's going to open up the first part about logistics in the office, and then I'm going to jump in for the second part. So I'll turn it over to you, Andrea.
Sorry. Thanks, Commissioner. Colleen is pulling up the slides again. So hi, everyone. I'm Andrea. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Commission. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with black glasses wearing a green necklace and shirt. So we're the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities, or Disabilities Commission for short. Our mission statement is that we aim to increase opportunities for people with disabilities in the city of Boston by ensuring full and equal participation in all aspects of life. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we actually do that. So a little bit of history. I know some of you have seen versions of this before, but the Disability Commission Advisory Board, which is you all, was first established in 1971 as an 8-member board, also known as the Commission on Handicapped Affairs. We did not adopt until 2009 the state law, which allows for the creation of these commissions, known as MGL Chapter 40, Section 8J, or just 8J for short. That established a 9-member Disability Commission Advisory Board in the city of Boston, which acts in its advisory role to the city's Disability Commissioner, who is Commissioner McCosh, and who leads the Disability Commission Department, and that is where we get paid. So that was founded in 1979. Again, it was the Commission on Handicapped Affairs that was provided with staff and funding. That is where our office comes in with city jobs. But then in 1987, a specific ordinance was created to name us the Commission for Persons with Disabilities to, as I just said in our mission statement, it's right in the city code, facilitate full and equal participation in all aspects of life. It also specifically charges our office with assisting the city with complying with accessibility laws. So in 1987, that wouldn't have necessarily included the ADA at the time, but it's phrased in such a way to say, any accessibility laws that apply to the city. So next slide. That means we are both a City of Boston department and the federal ADA Title II Coordinator Office. Our purpose, as I said in city ordinance, is to serve as a department to help other departments. And when the ADA was passed, requiring municipalities to designate a coordinator to comply with ADA Title II, we were ready-made right there in 1987 to serve that role. Yep, next slide. So, we'll start with the department. We are a 9-member department at this point, led by our fearless leader, Commissioner McCosh. I am the Chief of Staff. On the top part of this slide, there are the four pictures or icons representing myself, representing Patricia Mendez, our Director of Architectural Access, and her amazing team of Sierra Tilton, Architectural Access Specialist, and Sarah Leung, Senior Architectural Access Specialist. Commissioner will talk in more depth about what they do. And then I directly oversee the 4 pictures/icons that are on the bottom of the screen. Colleen Flanagan, our Outreach and Engagement Specialist, and currently slideshow screen share extraordinaire. Kylie Potter, our On-Street Accessible Parking Program Manager. Chris Morawski, our, that's an old title, Constituent Support Specialist, and Kai Kennedy, our Accessibility and Inclusion Training Specialist. Commission has a bunch of slides about what we do, but this slide will show you the 4 main things. It's got animations. So, on-street accessible parking that I mentioned, this is our primary service that we provide directly to residents by overseeing the installation of accessible parking spots in business areas and in front of neighborhood residents. Second is architectural access. We lead the city's efforts to create ideal accessibility in our built environment. That means buildings, but also sidewalks and roads. to go beyond the minimum ADA compliance. We have a lot of community engagement. We have our email newsletter. We have a bunch of events that Commissioner will talk about. We have our disability information and referrals. And then, of course, a huge part of what we do is be the staff that support you, the Disability Commission Advisory Board, in your work as appointees. So one of the sets of work that we do, we call it our admin team. I mentioned those events. We have 3 signature events each year that I think you all know about. Our Disability Community Forum. This is our Q&A session, our listening session, our attempt to hear from the community about what our priorities should be. ADA Day, of course, is our community celebration in July, and our bringing together of the community and free community services to connect everyone. That's our big event. Civic Engagement Day is our focus on bringing people with disabilities actively be invited into the working and functioning of city government, whether that is offering testimony at a council hearing, joining a board or commission, voting for participatory budgeting proposal. There's so much that we can do, and we want to show you how accessible it is. And then finally, all the Disability Employment Awareness Month activities that Commissioner mentioned. And then just a little more context on everything Kylie does with the OSAP program. That's both residential applications and renewals, community and commercial space installations. When MBTA diversions or other construction needs to relocate spaces, we coordinate that to ensure there's nothing lost. And they are actively involved in conversations across the city about how we use our curbs. What are the regulations that we should have on our curbs? Our admin team also includes outreach. So Colleen attends events from the Open Streets events, Ready Boston Field Day, Age Strong Resource Fairs, the Youth Jobs and Resource Fair. These are just the ones we could remember in like the last month, I think, that Colleen has been at. She is out in community all the time. She also runs our Boston Breaks outreach campaign that I know you all have heard about. She was actively involved in the SEARCH program, which is a community emergency response team training, which trained, I believe, Colleen, 50 people with disabilities to be certified leaders in their community in the case of an emergency response. She runs our Disability News and Views program. That's our monthly cable news channel. Oops, let me switch interpreters. Okay, that's our monthly cable news show, which is on Boston City TV, interviewing both city departments and local community members about their contributions to the city of Boston. We have a weekly newsletter that Colleen and Chris put together. We do interdepartmental collaborations for outreach, so that includes meeting with the public information officers from every department to amplify their message, make sure their message is being put out accessibly, meeting with the mayor's press office to ensure their work is accessible. And Colleen spends a lot of time at buildings that have high proportions of disability residents, whether that's just a newer building that's more accessible, or BHA, elderly disabled senior buildings. She spends time going out and meeting with community members. And then I'll kick it back to Commish to talk specifically about the federal ADA Title II work.
Thanks, Andrea. So yeah, I just wanted the board to see, how our office covers a really broad scope. So as a city department, I am the Disability Commissioner. I oversee the office, and I have a lot of flexibility in working with departments to make them knowledgeable about disability access and inclusion. We do trainings and things like that. So there's a lot of flexibility in programming. We get to hold our events. We get to do fun things like that. And then we also run the parking program. We do a lot of information and referral for residents. So all the things a typical city office would do. But in my role as the ADA Title II coordinator, as Andrea mentioned at the beginning, this is a federal designation, and it's a serious designation. which really has to uphold the hard line that the city of Boston cannot discriminate against people with disabilities. So there's really no flexibility in this piece of my role. And let's go into the next slide. So, to give you an overview of the Americans with Disabilities Act, I'm sure most of you are very familiar with it, but in case you don't know the different titles, I'd like to go over them to tell you what exactly we work on. So the ADA is a civil rights law that was passed in 1990, and it protects people with disabilities regardless of their citizenship status from being discriminated against on the basis of disability. The ADA has 5 titles, which are Title I is employment, and that is anyone who is an employee and feels like they've been discriminated against, they can file a complaint, and there's a whole process for that laid out by the ADA. You know, you can always Google these online after the meeting if you want more information, but each title lays out very specific parameters that have to be followed, and if they're not, then they are the basis for a complaint of discrimination. So Title II is state and local government. That's where we fall in. That's squarely where we lie. Title III is places of public accommodation, like restaurants and businesses. Title IV is telecommunications. And Title V is miscellaneous provisions. So just to drill down a little bit on each of these, Title I, employment. So for the city of Boston, anyone who's an employee and feels like they've been discriminated against can file a complaint with Human Resources. That is not something that my office handles. We don't get into any employment issues because I don't have oversight over that. What I can do is if a city employee has questions about what their rights are as an employee, I can counsel them on that. I can go over the process of what the city has to do and speaking with them about, say, a reasonable accommodation or a situation that they're trying to work on. I can give them information about the parameters and the process, but I can't do any adjudication on the situation. Title III, places of public accommodations. These are anything that happens in the public. Movie theaters, restaurants, businesses, clothing stores. So, you know, these are things that I also don't have direct oversight on. However, we have been working more in this field to coordinate with the city departments that do have oversight. Like the licensing board has oversight of restaurants. So we work with them in implementing the captions ordinance, as you all well know. So if a restaurant is not in compliance, we can reach out to them from our staff, but then we can also, you know, bring licensing in, and licensing can say, hey, if you don't comply with this mandate, then you may lose privileges to hold a TV in your place of business. So although we don't directly oversee it, we can have an impact. Another thing I do is we have what we call a do the right thing letter. So we get a lot of complaints from the public about discrimination in places of public accommodation because people in the public, they don't know exactly what we do, and that makes sense. So if someone calls us and says, oh, I was turned away from a restaurant because I have a service dog, we can't do anything to enforce that. But I can send a letter from the Disability Commissioner of the City of Boston saying, hey, did you know that this is a legal requirement? And the letter will have links and things like that. And a lot of times if a business just hears from the Disability Commissioner, they will do the right thing. A lot of times it's just a matter of awareness. So we are branching out into Title III a little bit, even though we don't have direct oversight of those things. Telecommunications. The biggest piece of this really is related to digital access. And when the ADA was written, there was no online, there were no websites, there were no emails. So that was totally left out of the ADA. But now we have the WCAG, which is the Web Computer Accessibility Guidelines, and they are required under 508, Section 508 of the Rehab Act. So anyone who gets federal money has to follow that act, which is the City of Boston. So we work closely with our digital team to make sure all the city websites are accessible. Colleen works really hard to make sure other departments are using alt tags when they post pictures. Again, this is part of our systemic work. Even though we don't oversee this, we push it out to all departments to make sure that they know that these are requirements. And then Title V is just kind of miscellaneous. We could skip that. And then just the last bullet on this slide, just so people know, as a local government entity, not only can we not discriminate or deny people participation in our services or programs, we also can't require them to go to a separate program. We may have separate programs like Camp Joy, is a camp in the summer for kids with disabilities. But if a kid with a disability wants to go to a typical camp with their siblings, we can't deny them that opportunity. If there are certain reasons why they couldn't participate, that may be an issue. Like if it's a hiking camp and someone's in a wheelchair and they can't do the hikes, it may not be something that we would have to change the hikes to let them participate in, but we may find a program that's a better fit. So the thing that the city doesn't have to do is to change the essential nature of the program, like if it's a hiking program, but we also can't require this person to say you can only go to Camp Joy. So it's really all about inclusion and making sure that people not only aren't discriminated against, but that they have access to all the services that we provide. Next slide. Okay, so a few other technical things that the ADA requires of me. I have to post a public notice of non-discrimination. And when I first started with the city in 2010, these were posters that we hung up in all city buildings. Now they're pretty much on the digital boards in different city buildings and online. And again, as part of my systemic work, I reach out to other departments all the time to make sure they post this notice, make sure that people know that they have a right not to be discriminated against, and if they are discriminated against, they can do something about it. So as we mentioned earlier, the ADA requires any public entity with 50 or more employees to designate an ADA Title II coordinator. So, as Andrea said, when we were already established as an office, it made perfect sense to give us that responsibility. So Mayor Menino appointed me as the ADA Title II coordinator in 2010. So my role as the coordinator, I have to prepare the self-evaluation and transition plan. So that's what we're working on now. I have to ensure that all municipal programs, policies, and services are accessible. And this is such a big job that we work on it systemically, and I'll get more into that later, because we only have 9 staff. And we don't build roads, for example, but we work closely with Public Works to ensure that when they build roads and curb ramps, that they're all accessible. Another task that we're required to do is to create an ADA grievance procedure. And this is a very easy thing to find. It's on our webpage. It's a form. If someone feels like they've been discriminated against, they can click on the link, fill out the form. I'll get back to them within a certain period of time. It might be 10 days or 20 days. And I'll discuss the issue with them. We really try to resolve these informally, if at all possible. Like if somebody says, oh, I requested large print type and they didn't have any. I'll call that department and I'll say, make sure you have this. Can you commit to that? Can you get this person, the information in large print? And that can be resolved. But if it's something more difficult, we get into a lot of difficult situations, and it might take some investigation to find out what an employee said to this person. If they say they were treated unfairly, we sometimes have to really, dig into the weeds of it. And if it's something we can't resolve, then we refer people to the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, because they can file a civil rights complaint. MCAD is a state agency that investigates civil rights complaints. So that would be the next step. And then if that isn't helpful, they can always go to the federal level, the Department of Justice, for a discrimination complaint on the basis of disability. Okay, so that is Title II. And then the third piece of Title II, which is critically important, is that government entities are required to provide effective communication. So this means people who use screen readers, are deaf or hard of hearing, any other communication-related disabilities must have access to the same information as those without disabilities. So you may remember during the pandemic, when it was Mayor Walsh at the time, when he was on TV every day giving updates, important updates, critical public health updates, we ensured that there was an ASL interpreter at every single meeting. And we've carried that practice over to Mayor Wu's press events. We work really hard to get ASL at every press event that she has. Unfortunately, there are not as many ASL interpreters available to cover every meeting. So Andrea and I meet weekly with the press team to prioritize the upcoming press conferences of Mayor Wu and say, okay, this one definitely has to have ASL, and this one may not be so important if it's like, a smaller announcement that doesn't impact a lot of people. We still ask them to reserve or request an ASL interpreter, but if they can't get it, we'd say, okay, Tuesdays isn't as important as Wednesdays, so please put your efforts into getting one for Wednesday. So people can request any reasonable accommodations they want, reasonable modifications to a policy and procedure. Some examples are like PDF documents as opposed to they have to be screen reader accessible. Something like if there's a no food policy in a public building, someone with diabetes needs to bring snacks, that's an easy accommodation that we can make. And then the other two, like obviously a wheelchair is not part of a no motorized vehicles policy in parks or buildings. Okay, so I think that wraps up Title II. Just in a nutshell, again, we do the grievances, we do investigation and resolution, and then we do proactive compliance with the ADA. And this is what I'll dig into a little bit more now. So, our architectural access team, you met them earlier, Patricia, Sarah, and Sierra. They are internal consultants for city departments. So what that means is they have monthly meetings with many different departments, and they also sit on different review committees. So they work closely with the Boston Transportation Department whenever the city's designing bike lanes or redesigning streets. Our staff is right in those meetings. Currently, the Public Works Department is working on the curb ramp consent decree to build 1,600 ramps every year. And they're in the process of hiring an ADA coordinator to sit in the Public Works Department. And Andrea and Patricia are on the hiring team, so they're currently doing interviews for an ADA coordinator. So our staff is really embedded in all of these departments, and they know to call us before any of these things go forward. We work closely with the Parks Department when they're redesigning a park. They do a lot of accessible features and playgrounds. We work with them to make sure that the pathways are accessible and smooth. And if they have questions about slopes or anything like that, they know who to reach out to. We also had an intern the last few years working on mapping accessible features in different parks, things that wouldn't be on a normal inventory, like is this water cooler accessible, water refill station accessible, where are there picnic tables with bench with a cutout for a wheelchair, things like that. So we just recently uploaded that to our webpage, so that's exciting. So one department that we work with closely is the Public Facilities Department. And this is a big one because they handle all the renovations and new construction for all city-owned buildings. So that's public schools, it's BCYF centers, it's libraries. So our staff is involved in all these meetings. So if a school is being redesigned and they can't do a ramp, they have to do one of those platform lifts, which we hate. Our staff will go on a site visit, they'll work with them very closely to say, hey, let's see if we can redesign this area to get a ramp in so we don't need a lift. Sometimes a lift is the only thing they can do, but luckily for us, Patricia Mendez, our Director of Architectural Access, also sits on the State Architectural Access Board, so she can guide them through the process of applying for a variance. So Patricia has a wealth of knowledge, she's a problem solver, so we always try to solve the problem first and foremost, and if not, we'll go for a variance. We also work closely with BHA. Although we don't have oversight over BHA because that's a quasi-city entity, we do work closely with them. You probably all have seen in the news recently, the elevators have been down in many buildings. So, we work closely with them on that. Okay, so just in the interest of time, I will move through a little more quickly. We also act as external consultants for private developments. So the Boston Planning and Development Agency, which is now the Boston Planning Department, has a review system called Article 80. So when anybody, a private development wants to build a building, a large building, they have to go through this Article 80. So a few years ago, we were able to implement an accessibility checklist into the process. So the developer has to lay out all the accessibility features. And they have to let us know up front if they're planning to request a variance from the AAB. A variance means that they're not able to make the building fully accessible. So we want to know up front why they're planning that and how can we make it accessible instead of applying for a variance. We also have a checklist for groups hosting events on City Hall Plaza. We do individual referrals for housing modifications and complaints. We resolve issues such as blocked pedestrian detours around city construction sites. And we produce public materials like a City Hall access brochure. Next slide. This admin team, Andrea covered the constituent services, but I wanted to leave it on this section because we do a lot of trainings. We now have a training and inclusion specialist, Kai Kennedy. They are on maternity leave, but they'll be back next week. We're really excited. They have only been on board just over a year, and they've already implemented like dozens of trainings. So they've done Disability 101, Accessibility 101, Service Dogs, Reasonable Accommodations. They're also recording a series of these trainings, so they're online to people to use. We're going to be working with the police department when Kai gets back to talk about interacting with people with disabilities and different things about like enforcing accessible parking violations and things like that. So also policies, and this is like a big picture or issue we want to work with you on, like the closed caption ordinance to make that an external policy. And then we are just internal consultants for policies that everybody's working on, like whether it's an election policy or emergency management policy. We are the go-to office for that. So I guess all this is just to say that we are deeply embedded in all the city's work of every department. And so I want the board to know that sometimes they'll say, oh, why don't you work on this? And usually the answer is we do work very closely on that. We just might not do a good job promoting ourselves in the work we do. And then I think there might just be one slide left. Yep. So this is the city org chart, the whole city of Boston org chart. So we look at this. We have it up on the wall in our conference room. And we look at each blue square is a cabinet, and the bullets underneath those are departments. So we look at each cabinet and say, oh, how can we have an impact here? What do these departments work on that we can help improve for accessibility? And we do a strategic plan every year to look at this whole picture. And then we take away our work plan to see how we can ensure that all the work of these departments and cabinets is accessible. And I know that was a lot, but I did just want to wrap it up because I know you want to have a discussion about goal setting. And happy to take questions or pass it back to Wes for the next part of the agenda. And please, I'll just make a note, take this slide home, the slide deck. We'll mail it out to you tomorrow. And please, dig into it, check some of the links. Just because you are our advisory board, I think it'd be great to really know what we do as an office.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandra, or Makash, thank you for that and talking about the commission and what it does. Are there any other questions or comments for both of them, for Andrea and Commissioner Makash?
I just want to say hi, this is Zari. I just wanted to thank you, Commissioner Makash. I have been a board member for, as you know, a very long time. But this was a great overview of everything that you do, and really I appreciate all the work that your staff does. I mean, it seems like, we have, at least I, had a very limited vision of what you did, thinking about the streets and housing, but really it goes so much beyond that, and I really do appreciate your work. One of the questions that I guess I have is, how can we be more active in, when you look at that chart and all the different municipalities, what do you suggest as far as, I don't have enough time to be on other boards, but how can I be more active?
I think that this is a great segue into the goal setting, because I know Charlie and other people have expressed, like you, like, what can we do? How can we move the work forward? So I think if we look at the goals, that will be some concrete steps that you can all take. And I also think I can commit on my end to communicating more with the board about certain things, like you may all have gotten an email from me last month, I think it was in August, about blue bike stations, that they were going to be looking to put them into different communities. You should weigh in on that. So I'm going to be more intentional about sending you opportunities to weigh in directly on programs that the city is working on, so you can give feedback. But I think we can, good time to transition, so I'll send it back to Wes.
Yes, thank you, Zari. Moving forward with the agenda here. The next item is the announcements. I don't have any announcements to share. Does anybody else have any announcements? Olivia, would you go ahead?
Yes, this is Olivia Richard. I wanted to point out that if you have a physical disability or a print disability that prevents you from using regular books or regular text, you can get accessible voting materials from Perkins Library for free. They can send you audio, they can send you large print, they can send it in Braille, any format you may need, they can send it. So I figured this close to the election, I should point that out.
Great, thank you, Olivia.
This is Carl. I get all my reading material, a lot of my reading material from the Perkins Library.
Yeah, it's not well known that they serve more than just the blind and low vision community. They also serve the physically disabled.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you for pointing that out about the resources from Perkins. That's especially important for us to be ready to vote in the election. And I see Richard, your hand is up. Do you have any announcements you'd like to make? And we can't hear you, Richard.
Yeah, the screen said everybody was muted, so I was muted. Somebody just let me interject. Thanks, Wes. Maybe I have the agenda wrong. I don't have it in front of me, but I thought we were going to discuss the survey tonight.
Yes, that's going to be 2 items next.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just hope we have enough time because I think people put a lot of thought into it.
Right. We should be able to. Let me look here. Do we have any other announcements? We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is old business. Are there any old business items to share? I don't have any personally. All right. Now on to new business. We're going to work on the board goal setting. I'm going to ask Andrea to pull up the slides.
Yep, thanks, Wes. So I'll just quickly summarize the survey findings from what the executive committee sent out. So multiple board members have expressed an interest in exactly what we've heard tonight, proactive, activity on the part of the board. So first, the executive committee sent out a, idea generation exercise where everyone could add any kind of goal they wanted. And then second, put together all of the suggestions for the board, for actions that the board could take, and sent those out for folks to vote. So there were 20 suggestions for board activity goals for things that you all could work towards. Of them, 10 folks voted. The goal with the most votes, 7 votes, so the majority of those voting and of the board, agreed on liking to set a goal of broader engagement with communities of different cultural and language background of people with disabilities. The next 4 goals had 5 votes each, so about half of those who voted and less than half the board. And those were, first, continue discussing community living, housing, and emergency preparedness as a regular meeting item. Mental health, physical health was second. Third, attempt to impact all or as many as possible of the 75 to 80,000 disabled residents of Boston. And fourth, become more proactive rather than simply be the receptors of information. I won't read all 60, the rest received at least one vote, but two quick context notes on this survey. One, it was not the sort of official vote. It is not the end-all be-all. This was the start of the conversation. So these goals can be added to, adapted, they're here to start your conversation tonight. Second, the goals that received the most votes were the most sort of high-level, big-picture goals that the board had. They're not the ones that are phrased in the most action-oriented language that set a sort of specific next step for y'all to do. So again, if you do decide to adopt goals in one of the coming meetings, my understanding from the executive committee is that you'd like to spend some time with these goals, potentially to set an agenda for next year's activities. If you do want to set a metric for success, what does it look like to have broader engagement with communities of cultural backgrounds? How would you measure success at being more proactive? You can set those at some point as well, and we, as your administrative staff, would be happy to track and measure and add those measures of success to your annual report that we produce. So those are my two pieces of context. We'll stop sharing the screen and send it back to Wes to open discussion.
This is Wes? Okay, terrific. So I'm going to be leading or facilitating this conversation as we begin our talk about these things. And I remember, so I will probably hesitate also to participate. Remember, please, as we start this discussion, that this is a work in progress. We don't have solutions for many of these things. They're not going to be able to be built overnight. But we can figure out what our priorities are in terms of the goals as they've been discussed. And I see 3 people with their hands raised, so I will call on them in the order that I saw them. The first is Carl, the second will be Charlie, and the third will be Richard. Go ahead, Carl.
So one of the things I heard during the commissioner's report is that they're involved in many different departments across the city and have an impact that way. And I'm wondering if the board can do the same thing and maybe be a surrogate for the commissioner's office. And maybe a number of us, maybe we could set a goal like 3 members of the 13-member board will join other boards within the city of Boston and report back. And so there'll be 2 things. One will be educating this committee on what other agencies are doing, and then we'll also have a voice and impact in other areas of what the city of Boston is doing, so it doesn't always fall on the commission, that we can also have an impact. So I'm just wondering if that's a potential goal that we can say maybe 3 members serve on, or it doesn't have, whatever, can serve on other committees and then report back to this on what is going on.
This is Wes. I think that was actually one of the goals mentioned in the survey, Carl, and I didn't see it at the top of the list, and therefore I wonder whether it was voted for by a majority or by a high number of members.
I know, but I'm bringing it up anyway.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate the input. Any other comments about Carl's suggestion before we move on to Charlie? Okay, let's move on. Charlie, the floor is yours.
Hey, I didn't, did Richard get to go? Sorry. I didn't know because his hand is still up, or did you go already, Richard? I was just going on the order.
No, Charlie, you were going to be next. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. I do see that, sorry. No, I think, that, and thanks for circulating the survey. It was interesting because I didn't vote for some of my things because I saw similar type of goals. And I think it's interesting to see the survey results because there are a lot of commonalities between them. And I don't want to create more work or anything, but I immediately kind of saw a specific graph that would show how things intersect, and a lot of the board members have very similar similar ideas, concerns, and goals. So I'm excited, to start this conversation. I know that I don't know if there's a hope that we're going to get all of it done today, but I do appreciate the end results of a lot of the higher level things such as transition services, work, job creation, all those types of things for a lot of the community. And all of this that I see, a lot of it falls into that one bucket. Andrea, I appreciated the slide that you showed of the 4 buckets that the commission actually does. And the one bucket on community outreach. So it's very, very helpful to see. I think a lot of our goals fall into some of that, which I can see that you guys have a lot of work on your hands. So trying to figure out how to help set the goals, but then also not create an environment where they wouldn't be achievable due to potentially limited resources. So hopefully I'm making sense.
This is Wes. Thank you, Charlie. Richard, go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Wes. I would urge the commission to take a big picture view of this, for starters. There may be ideas that relate to what we might agree upon, but I'd start with the big picture. I've been involved with government at the state, at the municipal, state, and federal levels. I have represented and served on nonprofits and for-profits of all sizes, and every entity I've ever been involved in adopts a business plan. And this is not to say that, to suggest that all the efforts that the commissioner and her staff are making and have made are not spectacular. But their activities, their work plan activities, whereas I would urge us to think about the big picture and what would our goals be? What should the commission's goals be? So, for example, we've got 75 to 80,000 citizens of Boston who are disabled. How do we best impact all of them? And so what you do when you develop the business plan, I'm sure many of you have had this experience, is you come up with your goals and then you develop how you're going to get there. And you put that into the plan. And then you have something to review after each year to see what you've accomplished, what you haven't. And then you renew the process the following year and you look at what you were able to accomplish and you try to accomplish even more in the year to come. And then if you haven't finished something in the year before, you try to get back to that and finish it. And so I would urge the commission to think about the big picture, think about what we're talking about here in terms that are comprehensive, and then go from there. Thanks, Wes.
This is Wes. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for that. As a person living in Boston, I will say, 75 to 85,000 people living in the city of Boston with disabilities is a remarkable number. And I agree that we need to find a way for the commission to impact as many or all of those people as possible at various levels. So I appreciate your commitment to the prioritization of that. Zari, I see that you had a question in the chat. She said, thank you, Andrea. Will it be possible for board members to, I'm sorry, hang on one second while the interpreter finds that. Thank you, Andrea. Would there be an opportunity for board members to learn about what tools you use to measure success?
Yeah, this is Andrea. So the processes that we're working on in the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet include measuring success in a number of ways. Many of them as possible, are metrics. So for example, before we were in the Equity Cabinet, our department had to report to City Council each year as part of the budget process. How many constituents did we talk to? How many accessible parking applications did we process? What was the average time to process them in days? How long did it take us to give people responses?
Technical assistance.
Sorry?
Technical assistance on architectural plans.
Yes, the number of technical assistance, percentage of technical assistance questions that we answered, and the number of ADA Title II consultations we gave. So a lot of them were raw counts, and that could be one thing. To Richard's point about impacting everyone in the city, you could, what does impact mean? You could say that's coming to your meeting, set a raw count for how many people you want to come to your meeting, or, you know, the city plans that Commissioner mentioned, the surveys and input opportunities we send. Is there a raw number of surveys you all want to answer to make sure the disability perspective is in those surveys? Those are raw counts that you could do to measure success. There are other ways to measure success that are more qualitative. If you wanted to look at, you know, the quality of the events that you have or something like that, I'd be happy to, you know, provide some additional advice, but primarily we try to use as many quantitative measures as possible, so raw counts and, you know, time to answer questions, percentage of questions answered, things like that.
Hi, it's Kristen McCosh. I just want to add a little bit of context too before we continue the discussion. 2 points I want to make. First is that I just want to be sure that board members contain their thoughts to the board and not to the office, because we have our, you know, our directives laid out and we're doing all our work. So make sure that the business plan ideas or whatever you have like that, Richard, are contained to the board. Because when we did get some input on goals and things, some of them kind of crossed over, but we want you all to focus on the board. And in that context, make sure you consider your bylaws, because they lay out very specific things that you are enabled to do through legislation.
This is Wes. Any other questions or comments about the survey results? The floor is open. I would like to ask Andrea to send the results out to those of us board members so that we would have some time to be able to reflect on them while considering the list. And we can think about those goals for the board with that list in front of us. It's going to take some time. Unfortunately, there's not going to be any easy overnight solution for any of these questions. Carl, I see your hand is raised. I don't know whether that was from before. Did you have another comment or question?
No, that was from before. I'll take it down.
Okay, great. And Charlie, go ahead, Charlie.
Yes, so this is Charlie. I will be, full disclosure, I was one of those who sent in a little bit too granular items in, but it was very helpful to gain a little bit more clarity after having a conversation with Andrea, and also the presentation that was shown. But I think it would be helpful to kind of, Commissioner, if you can explain, I mean, so the goal setting, and you are stating this, that the goal setting is for the board, the advisory board, and then the goals, you set forth the goals within the cabinet for your department, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, so we can do this effectively, right? To see how those cross over, right? Because this should be a collaboration, and it should be not on accountability, but we should be celebrating the ability to show metrics and to actually achieve things together. And that's where I'm trying to, if you can help kind of put a little more clarity on that, in the sense of goal setting on the board level, that you envision that can then help support and kind of trickle down to the department.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we really want to do in my office is we want to give people with disabilities a seat at the table. And you are the first ones in line at that table. So that's why during our monthly board meetings, we bring city departments to you. We'll bring like the transportation department to you to talk about the curb ramp consent decree. We'll bring elections to you so you can ask questions about the accessible voting policies and procedures. And I will say, like, I know a lot of the cities would be really excited if the commission did that. Like, you never have to worry that you won't have access to a city department, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to facilitate this. We bring BPS to talk about, what they're working on to you, because all these city departments are really accountable to the public, and you are the appointed board who represents the public, the disability public, to the city. So I think that's a huge thing, that we bring you departments and you can give direct input. And as I mentioned earlier, I am going to commit to being more intentional about sending you all opportunities like the surveys for Boston Blue Bikes. So that was a survey that the Transportation, the Bikes Commission put out to say, we're going to install all these new bike stations. Where do you want them? Now, you may know your neighborhood better than someone who works in City Hall, so that's your opportunity to say, well, it's really a bad idea to put it here because this is a narrow sidewalk, and I know, families with strollers are always on this corridor, so let's not do that. So I think one way that you can directly, work with us is when I send out these opportunities, take advantage of them, give your voice to them, fill out the surveys that I send. And also, I mentioned the developments, the big developments, part of the Article 80 process. We have an accessibility checklist, and this checklist basically summarizes all the accessibility components of a certain development. We can send those to you. You can review them, because all these developments offer public comment. So you may see, and this is a perfect summary, it's a huge development. It's a 300-page document that we get, but all we really need to focus on is the checklist, which is about 8 pages. So if we sent that to you to say, hey, there's a new building going up in the north end, and this is all the accessibility features, they're having an open meeting, in 2 weeks, would you participate? Would you give input? So I think if I send you, or my staff sends you, things like that, where you can have direct impact on city planning and policies, I think that's a great match for you to get involved.
And if I could add, Commissioner, vice versa. You all know about things happening in the neighborhood that we don't. We're not in the North End, every day the way we're in City Hall. So if you hear about an opportunity to participate in your neighborhood, or a concern in your neighborhoods or a concern in your communities that we need to know about, tell us. Or bring it to the board if it's an opportunity for the board to present or offer an opinion on. So just to add to Commissioner, 2A, we'll bring you city surveys, you bring us other surveys so that we can be in touch.
Right, and a perfect concern like that is outdoor dining. How do you feel about outdoor dining in the North End as a parent of a child with a disability? We'll get your input directly to the people who are making these policies. So it's a real bridge that, like I said, when you have a seat at the table, we want your input in that way.
Wonderful, thank you, Andrea. I did want to add one comment about the Blue Bike survey.
I did participate in that survey.
I did participate in that. And my wife knows that I'm interested in the Blue Bite expansion.
So she encouraged me to do it.
Thank you. She encouraged me to do it. That is one way that I've participated in other projects through the parts of Boston.
Wes, can I also add one more thing?
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. So another thing that's laid out in the bylaws is that you will get information out to the disability community, and I know that was a goal that a lot of people checked off. So that's why I say, after these meetings, go through the documents that we share with you, and please spread them out. Like our webinar is coming up in October. We'd love to see a lot of parents from the special SPED PAC, special ed team come to those meetings, trainings, because they'll learn stuff for their kids. Really sharing the information that we send out is critical. And it might seem like a small thing, but it's really not, because, like Andrew said, you're in the North End, you're in Mattapan, you're in South Boston. We're not, but let your neighbors and friends and people in your different groups know about the work that the city's doing, and let them know, even if you don't want to weigh in on the building development, maybe they would want to, pass along that information. A new development's going up in Mattapan, you can weigh in on it, you can tell them what you want to see, and they will listen, especially if you say you're a member of the advisory board. Not that you speak for the board, but that you have this position as an appointed official. Your word, will make an impact.
Thank you for that addition. We are running out of time. It looks like we've got about 10 minutes left here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the agenda. The next new business item are the bylaws being updated to match the state standards. I can explain. There's one item that the City of Boston bylaws has been told to the board about. The bylaws say that one board member may be a representative of a family member with a disability. On the state level bylaws, it says that a board member shall be a member of a family with someone who has a disability. So we want to change the language of that bylaw to allow the requirement of at least one board member that has a family member with a disability. I wanted to let you know we're not going to vote on it tonight, but probably at the next meeting we will be discussing that and then vote if it's appropriate. Are there any questions or comments about that part?
This is Carl. May I speak?
Go ahead, Carl.
So I'm wondering, and I don't know because it's been a while since I've read Robert's Rules of Order, but I'm wondering if that could be considered a friendly amendment and not necessarily up for vote because we're simply following state regulation for the bylaws to match. So I'm even wondering if we should just go ahead and change that. I don't know, and I would ask the attorney on this call to weigh in. Is that something that we have to vote on, or since we're simply trying to match state bylaws, do we have to vote on that?
You know, I don't have the answer to that, Carl. That's a good point.
Andrea, is that something you could check with legal counsel? Or should we just play it safe and vote on it at the next meeting?
I think Wes wants to call on the next board member first.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Andrea. Let me say that again.
Andrea, did you have a comment?
So this is there. I can answer Carl's question, but Wes, I thought I saw you signing that you wanted Richard to go ahead.
You could go ahead and answer, Carl.
Yeah, so I would have to check officially and legally. I'm also not a Robert's Rules of Order person, but I do know that the state law would supersede, would trump the local bylaws. So in effect, you are already bound by 8J, so it would be a formal vote, not a substantive change. So I can check if it can be, you know, a consensus motion without a vote.
Okay. I'll now go to Richard.
Wes, I'm not sure I caught that. I thought I heard you say, for example, this would be a change. Is this the only change that's being proposed?
This is the only change.
Okay. Can maybe send a red line
And it's a
version?
simple change.
Maybe send a red line version out to everybody before the next meeting?
Sure, I'm going to ask Andrea to take care of that. Perfect. Andrea says yes, that's fine. Now let's go to Paulette. You can go ahead.
So when was the last time that we revised our bylaws?
This is Wes here, definitely before my time on the board. I'm not quite sure. Does anybody else know?
I think it was 2013.
When we changed it from 9 members to 13.
Yeah, that was 2013, Carl.
Thank you. Charlie, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we don't take a simple vote so that we could see the red line, because I think it's important. I can't remember the exact language, but from my perspective, and I think the law states that a board member without a disability shall be on that has a child or a loved one with a disability, and not self-serving whatsoever. I just want to let everybody know the perspective and how much I appreciate actually being on the board, to be on, to learn your perspectives as adults, but then also to try to bring and learn the perspective of where I'm at, trying to navigate everything and raising a child with disabilities, especially in such a large city as Boston with all the different services. So whenever those red lines circulate, and I know we'll have a discussion, I want to say how important I think that the seat that I'm in is, being the sole member without a disability, but that I do significantly appreciate how much I've learned from everyone has it been 2 years? I think it's been almost 2 years now. For serving and to understand and gain that perspective, and then to see how to advocate. I think that's. I just want to be clear that I'm really learning how to advocate better as my daughter starts to, as she grows up and goes through life. So thank you,
Charlie. It's Kristen. I just want to say we value this role so highly. It's critical to have a parent. Especially a parent of someone in DPS who has a disability. We had this slot vacant for a long time, and we were really making efforts to get that filled because we agree it's a critical perspective that we need on the board. And we do have another member who has a family member who doesn't have a disability but has a family member. So you are not the only one, but yours is certainly critical.
Okay. Now is a good time to transition into the next item. Here on the agenda, it's the public input portion. Would anybody like to say anything at this time from the public? Any comments? If you do want to say something, there's 2 minutes left.
This is Andrea from the board, from the commission. I'm confusing myself now. If you're from the public, please use the raise hand function or the chat to indicate that you have a comment. And yes, as Wes mentions, you have 2 minutes to make your question or comment. But I will have to send you a request to unmute if you have one, so please indicate visually or in the chat.
Is there anyone who would like to make a question or comment from the public? All right. Is somebody willing to close the meeting?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Excellent. Can I get a second? We've got Paulette raising your hand first. Excellent. Everyone in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 The meeting is now adjourned. It is 7:29. Thank you. Have a great evening. See you next month.